যে একটা স্কেডিউল করে রেখেছিল ওটা কি না? বুঝতে পারছি না।
হ্যালো।
কথা বলতে ভালো লাগছে না। দেখবি? ও কিন্তু কুকুর বানাচ্ছে মাঝে। So shall I start?
Just a second. Wait for a few seconds. You start at 2 exactly. You can start now.
Good afternoon to everyone present today. On behalf of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Damdam Motijil College, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome all the participants to the webinar for fake and propaganda news coverage in media. I welcome our speakers of this session, Dr. Aisha Tahira Rashid, Assistant Professor, Department of Mass Communication, Central University of Assam, Silchar, and Mr. Kingshuk Pramanik, Deputy Editor of Shangbad Pratidin and Secretary Press Club, Kolkata, to impart their valuable insight towards today's topic. A very warm welcome to our Honorable Principal Sir, Dr. Pradipta Gupta Roy, without whose encouragement the webinar would not be completed. I would also like to welcome Dr. Santosh Kumar Roy, Coordinator IQAC Cell, and Dr. Haradhan Shaha, Convener Seminar Committee. Our Head of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, Dr. Kaushik Roy, and today's moderator, Dr. Payal Sen Chaudhary. Now, I will ask Dr. Payal Sen Chaudhary to take over the session and give an overview of the topic. Over to you, Payaldi. Dr. Payal Sen Chaudhary.
Yes, I'm over here. Thank you, Professor Antara Haldar. I would like to start my session now. Good afternoon, everyone. Before starting our webinar today, firstly, I would request our respected Principal, Sir, Dr. Pradipta Gupta Roy, to say a few words. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Payal Sen Chaudhary, Dr. Kaushik Roy, Professor Antara Haldar, and Devashmita Sarkar, Professor Devashmita Sarkar, the Faculty of Journalism and Mass Communication of our Damdam Motijil College. Nice to, obviously there are, Anirban is also there, I think so, and Siddhartha is there. So we all welcome you all. So today our webinar, national webinar, is fake and propaganda news coverage in India. We know that the fake news as those news stories that are false. The story itself fabricated with no verifiable facts, sources, or quotes. Sometimes these stories may be propaganda that is intentionally designed the reader, or may be designed as clickbait written by economic incentives. In recent years, fake news stories have proliferated via social media, in part because they are so easily and quickly shared online. We have Dr. Aisha Tahira Rashid of Central University of Assam, Silchar, and Mr. Kingshuk Pramanik, Deputy Editor, Shangbad Pratidin, and Secretary Press Club, Kolkata, to discuss about this. We welcome you all and thank you for joining the webinar. With this, let me shift my microphone to Dr. Kaushik Roy to start the lecture series. Thank you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable thoughts. And next, we would all like to invite our beloved Professor, Dr. Santosh Kumar Roy, Coordinator of IQAC, to share his thoughts with us. Sir, please.
On behalf of IQAC, I, the coordinator of Damdam Motijil College, welcome and very much grateful to all the resource persons and participants for today's webinar on fake and propaganda news coverage in media during these extraordinary difficult circumstances under COVID-19 protocol. Today's topics are not only for the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, but it is very helpful to all of us when all the colleges and universities are totally closed and students are in rest in their homes. So it will be helpful for all to us. And now I say actually we shall hear, we shall see, and we shall show how the fake and propaganda news we have, and it will be come from the resource persons only, and we see it live. And I wish it's great success in this webinar. Thank you to all. Kaushik.
Thank you very much, sir. Next, we would request our another adorable professor, Dr. Haradhan Shaha, convener of seminar committee, to spare us his thoughts. Sir, please.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a matter of pride and honor to the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication of Dam Dam Motil College for organizing this two-day national webinar. Today is the final and concluding day. I, on behalf of the convener of the Dam Dam Motil College Seminar Committee, I welcome you all in this connection. The topic which has been selected by the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication is closer to my heart and encouraging. The topic is like this: fake and propaganda news coverage in media. Today's speaker will deliver their talks on this issue. This national seminar is the common platform for sharing knowledge, thoughts, ideas, and opinions, and research activities in the light of modern research. The appreciable number of students, teachers, researchers, and journalists, academicians have participated in this event. I think all of you enjoy a lot, just like the other day. I also hope that you will be enriched and benefited a lot by attending this program. Lastly, I want to give credit and sincere thanks to Dr. Kaushik Ray, head of the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, and other departmental colleagues, and our principal, Dr. Pradipta Gupta Rai, and principal of our college, Dr. S.K. Rai, convener IQAC, for their significant contribution in organizing this meet. Thank you all once again for participating in this webinar meet. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So before starting our topic, I would like to share a few words. Like we all know how news has become an integral part of our daily life, and that every day we look up to different media houses, sometimes electronic or print media, to get information from throughout the world. We look up to the media houses because of its reliability and credibility. But sadly today, we see that media houses have become more a news industry than a news organization. With profit motive being the bull's eye, propaganda news has become a casual trend, and in an urge to remain ahead in the stiff news competition, accuracy and fact-checking often takes a back seat. Not only different media organizations, but also the sudden growth of the new media or social media are also to be blamed for the unethical rise of fake news coverage. Unchecked information travels unreined in this platform at such a speed that news reliability is decreasing with every passing day. Thus, a thorough introspection into the growing concern of today's journalism trend, that is fake and propaganda news coverage in media, is necessary. And for this, today, we have two eminent speakers in both our sessions. In our first session, we are grateful to have Dr. Aisha Tahira Rashid of Department of Journalism Mass Communication, Central University of Assam. In her decade-long career, she has specialized in social media research. Her insight will help us today to understand the issue of fake and propaganda news better. Ma'am, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. I'm the, hello.
Yes, ma'am, you are
Yeah,
audible.
yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, I consider it a big privilege and an honor to be part of this webinar series today. I'm extremely grateful to the organizers of this webinar series, and especially, Dr. Kaushik Rai and principal of the college, Dr. Pradipta Roy sir. And I'm also, grateful to all the participants of this webinar series, the academicians, the research scholars, the students for being part of this seminar today. I'm also grateful to my research scholar, Dev Smita Sarkar, for inviting me to be part of this seminar. So, basically what I have done is, I've prepared a small presentation considering we have, not too much of time today. And the issue at hand is very, it calls for a lot of discussion, but however, I've tried to keep it a little, brief, considering I don't, barge into the other presenters' timeline. So, I've prepared a few slides. So, with your permission, I would just like to, begin the presentation. So, the topic that I have prepared for today's presentation is critical digital literacies in an era of fake news, post-truth, and clickbait. So basically, we all know that we today, live at an age which we call Internet of Things, or the, Internet of Everything. So basically what happens is that the evolution of the global web has resulted in virtual connections, which are, penetrating real world objects and activities. So today, everything can be connected with everything else, like, creating a new distributed ecosystem that goes beyond the familiar, the understanding of what we call Internet of Things. So Cisco has coined a new term for it. Instead of Internet of Things, we call it Internet of Everything, which, ascribes to the whole concept of how much, everything in the world is, like, from computers to tablets to smartphones to people, data and processes, everything is connected to each other. And then any object, can be outfitted with digital features and connected to the common network of other objects. As in, a person can be, a person, what website he searches, what he does is, like, known to the, the global web that we say. So basically, digital revolution is something that is sweeping the entire world, and, even India is not left far behind. So digital revolution is sweeping even across, small towns and villages. And I have collected a small amount of data pertaining to which we find that in February 2020, India was using 1.3 billion of, gigabytes of data per month. So you can understand the kind of penetration of internet that is there in the world today. We have today in India, we have around 566, million internet users. We have 300 million Facebook users, 200 million WhatsApp users, and 35 million Twitter users. So basically, according to what Tristan Harris of the Center of Human Technology says, there are more than 2 billion people who use Facebook today, which is about the conventional followers of Christianity. And there are about 1.8 billion users of YouTube, which is about the number of conventional followers of Islam. So you can understand how much, of internet people are using today. People check their phones. We don't even realize that we, check our phones, mobile phones, or the internet so much. But according to statistics, people check their phones at least about 150 times a day in a developed world, which equates to at least once every 6.4 minutes in a 16-day hour. So you can understand how much, of internet use has been there among all the people in the world. So social media, basically, when we talk about internet, we are, primarily talking about social media and the many users of social media. So social media, as we all know, is a relatively new phenomenon, and it has, it has been used by different sections of people for various kinds of requirements. It provides different gratifications to different people. And the whole idea of social network was to create some kind of social connection, or to fulfill the basic requirement of or need of being informed and being entertained. But we have seen, research has shown that over the years social media has been used for identity creation. Some people use it for building social capital, be it bonding social capital or building bridging social capital. It is used for filling up certain psychological and emotional needs of people. And if we have to quote Stanley Milgram, you must be knowing that in 1967 there was this person called sociologist called Stanley Milgram, who had said that between any two people in the world there is 6 degrees of separation, which means that he had done some study on network connectivity among people in the way back in the 1967, and he had found that between any two random people in the world there is 6 degrees of separation, which means I know one person who knows another person, and so on. So between any two people in the world there are 6 degrees of separation. Now obviously with the coming of social media, with the coming of Facebook, and before that, prior to that, we had Orkut, that 6 degrees of separation, according to a research which was done by Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, and they had found that the 6 degrees of separation that was there between any two random people in the world has now shrunk, and it has become 4.37 degrees of separations, which means there is definitely, or as we can quote Marshall McLuhan, the world has become a global village, and there is more interconnectivity among people. We also understand that social media, apart from creating a platform for creating identity, social capital, fulfilling psychological and emotional needs, or bringing people together, it has also provided acted as a platform providing a voice for marginalized communities. So basically, people like, the people belonging to religious, linguistic minorities, or LGBT communities, for example, they use social media for, raising their issues and concerns. So, but here comes the issue. Here comes the basic concern. Now, even as social media has democratized, say, when it comes to news, it has democratized the way news is reported or news is disseminated. It has also raised concerns about the core principles of journalism, which is accuracy, independence, fairness, and so on. But this is not something which has only been a recent phenomenon. Journalism has, as we all understand, we as students or academicians of journalism, we all understand that journalism has gone through different phases, in the last 100 or 200 years. And right from the time when Gutenberg's printing press was, developed, that had also given the scope for propaganda and hoaxes. We all also understand that the War of the Worlds radio drama that was staged in 1938 on the night of Halloween. So that is also an example of how news can be used for, or news on social, news on mainstream media can be used for propaganda purposes. But with the coming of a new information ecosystem, the participatory web, as is called by Jenkins in 2006, we now have a new information ecosystem wherein instead of depending on media houses, on social media especially, we depend on user generated content. So this is a relatively more democratized or more diverse information ecosystem. But the concern again is regarding what kind of news is getting projected, how that news gets made, how it is shared, and how it is spread in the online context. And basically we all understand that social media, because of its because of the tremendous power it has over the people, new powerful technology makes manipulation and fabrication of content very simple. So most of the time what we see now is, in the garb of news, we have extreme views, we have conspiracy theories and populism. These are things that have flourished on social media, and dramatically, it is a very sad thing to have developed, that social networks, they have dramatically amplified falsehoods which are peddled by states, sometimes by popular politicians, and sometimes even by dishonest corporate entities. So basically, social media acts as a fertile ground for computational propaganda. It is a basic platform for trolling, and it has given rise to concepts like sock puppet networks, spoof, and basically everything this happens. This whole idea of social media, particularly, and even mainstream media, being subject to some kind of not information but disinformation, is because these news get shared by very uncritical publics. Now, this is an example that I found recently, that in 2000, there is this Macedonian city called the city of Velis. Okay, it is a city which is in the country called Macedonia, and this is a very quaint and very rural kind of this thing area, which is not very developed, and it has a population of only around 47 to 50,000 people. But this city of Velis, this has become very famous in recent times, especially post the 2016 US elections. The city of Velis has come to the forefront because of a very peculiar reason, and that peculiar reason is that this particular city of Velis, which has a population of only 50,000 people, it hosts over 100 US political websites. So basically what they do is that they trade in a new industry, and that new industry is that of fake news. So, the people living in this particular city of Velis in Macedonia, especially the digitally savvy citizens, they are earning a huge amount of money, because fake news is something which is getting monetized, especially with things like Google AdSense accounts. So this particular city is a classic example of how monetization of fake news happens. And these people, these young teenagers, they know very little about US politics, and they even care lesser about US politics, but their whole aim is to create content which is controversial. And this controversial content, they aim to be virally shared across social media platforms. So basically, this is an example of how even the it's very interesting to note that in this article, which was written by Panagrazio, he had said that even the mayor of the city of Velis, he had said that it doesn't matter that the city of Velis is becoming infamous for hosting fake political websites. US politics of most of these websites are pro-Trump. But he says that it doesn't matter even if the news that is shared on these platforms are fake, because these young teenagers are paying more tax than even the teachers in their schools. So the average income of this, the wage of these youngsters is around 4,200 euros a year, and sometimes they even earn 20 times of that amount through their AdSense accounts. So this is an example of how monetization of fake news. Fake news, as we all understand, is a term which has become very popular in recent times. So what is fake news exactly? Fake news is basically any information that is deliberately meant to be wholly or largely false or misleading. So basically, spread of false, misleading, and persuasive content, and the ways in which they malign players, or how whether it is automated, whether it is created by bots, or through algorithms, or it is created by human beings, or both together. They basically face fake news. What they tend to do, or what they aim to do, is to distort what is true in order to create influence, and sometimes to intimidate, at times to make money, or sometimes even to influence political elections. So history is replete. Okay, even if we do not talk about, say, things like social media and the circulation of fake news, our history is replete with fake news, right from the times of the Nazi propaganda, how they used propaganda machinery to build anti-Semitic fervor, or how the Catholic Church false explanation of the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, how it prompted Voltaire to speak against religious dominance. Or in the 1980s, how in the US, racist sentiment, false stories about African Americans were spread as are all examples of propaganda news. Now, as journalism students, we all understand the the classic example of competition between the rival publishers Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst, how they gave rise to something that we know as yellow journalism, how they to stay ahead in this rat race for circulation figures, they they resorted to what we call fake news, or that led to the rise of sensationalism in news, or yellow journalism. These are all examples which I can show you. The Great Moon Hoax, which was published by the Sun magazine, which was a leading profitable newspaper of those times, the War of the Worlds radio drama that we have already talked about. So basically, the Great Moon Hoax, these are all examples of fake news, something that existed way back in 1835. Then now, in addition to this whole concept of fake news, we have also encountered, our students here may not be, you may be aware of this new term that has found a lot of, that has found a lot of use in academic discussions today, and that is the whole idea of post-truth. Basically, we refer to it as post-truth politics. Now, post-truth, what exactly is post-truth? In 2016, as this particular slide shows, the Oxford Dictionary selected post-truth as the word of the year. And, this was a term which was used in the 1992 article of, Steve Tessich, who said, that this basically, the whole concept relates to the idea of how objective facts become less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to human and emotional and personal belief. So the rationality, whole idea of news being objective, the whole idea of news being the requirement of news of being objective and rationality, logical. So these are things which do not matter anymore, as long as something affects you emotionally, or as long as, like we say, there's this theory called reinforcement theory or phenomenistic theory, which says that media does not change opinion, it only reinforces existing beliefs. So post-truth is a term which relates to these concepts, in which objective facts matter less in shaping public opinion than appeals to human and personal belief. So this term was recently, it's resurfaced in 2004 in a title by a book called Ralph Case. So basically, this whole idea, the whole idea of social media being a closed epistemic network, which is responsible for an era of post-truth and fake news. Now, while we think that we are in control, we tend to believe that when I'm using my phone, when I'm checking my phone, and when I'm using my Facebook account, I am an individual and I have control. We tend to think that we are in control of what we look at when we check our phones. Which is on an average, according to Tristan Harris, around 150 times a day. But we, without even realizing, our mind is being hijacked, as if we are playing a slot machine. We come across in our news feed, we come across news stories, or we come across stories which create what we call echo chambers. Echo chambers, as in the whole concept, or the concept of filter bubble, which was given by Ellie Parisser. So these are all ideas where we tend to believe news which are very polarized in nature, or news which is very hyper partisan in nature, in the sense that I will believe only what fits or suits my own ideology. I will not believe something, I will not go for the alternative truth. I will believe only that kind of news which pertains to my own idea, or my own frame of reference, or on my own belief system or ideology. So basically what happens here is that because social media has the tendency or the ability to create what we know as filter bubbles or echo chambers, partisan, kind of very, biased kind of news, very polarized kind of news, is being created. And most of the times this manipulation is done by populist leaders, governments, and fringe actors. Now, one of the basic things, how do they do it? Now, there are different techniques of creating fake news, and one of it is the concept of clickbait. Now, what exactly is clickbait? Clickbait is basically, this is again done by the media, as in especially in online advertising, wherein, they show us stories which are very interesting, but which are fake in nature, but ultimately they are used only to generate online advertising revenue. Now, according to different people, there are different kinds of fake news. Okay, now that again depends on the intention behind sharing of that fake news, and accordingly, basically fake news is something which is false. Okay, now accordingly we can define it into three types. The first is misinformation. Misinformation is basically, it is unintentional, it is false, but maybe the creator of that particular news story did not know that it is inaccurate or it is false. So misinformation is one thing. Then we have something which is called fabricated or deliberately manipulated audiovisual content, which we term as disinformation. And on the extreme is malinformation. Malinformation is basically when you try to create it is the publication of private or personal or corporate information, rather something which, when you directly attack a private person instead of maybe a public enterprise or a interest. And the example of which is something that you call deep fakes. Sometimes you may manipulate or morph somebody's photos in order to create malinformation, and most of the time it is used in things like revenge pornography or deep fakes and other things. So basically, if you can look at the slide on the right, you'll see that there are different types of misinformation. We have satire, we have misleading content, we have imposter content, wherein we sometimes understand these are not real news stories, but these are all different types of misinformation. We have imposter content. Sometimes we have fabricated content. Sometimes when headlines, visuals, and the content they do not match with each other, you sometimes just give a headline so as to grab the attention of the of the people. Then you have false context, and then you also have manipulated content. Now, whole idea behind circulation of fake news is that especially when it comes to politics, we have to understand that media, particularly social media nowadays, has become or is something that we according to Louis Althusser, we call ideological state apparatuses. Just as in every state we have the repressive state apparatus like the police, the defense forces, the government, whose dictate we have to follow. On the other hand, we also have certain things like education or religion or sometimes even media, which act as something that Althusser calls ideological state apparatuses. So what we engage in nowadays when it comes to mediatized politics in the age of fake news is that we engage in something that you call post-truth politics. Now, what a government is doing or what the opposition is doing, their actions do not matter to us anymore. What matters is whether the stories that come about on media, particularly the stories that come about either about the government or about the politicians or about, say, the opposition, whether or in what way it affects our psyche, how it affects our emotions. So basically, we are all conduits in this whole systematic, synchronized and organized transmission of exclusivist discourse. Now, we do not have the rationality anymore of reasoning out, because we are all in some kind of filter bubble. We are all in, we have all been indoctrinated in such a way that, we believe only that is given to us. So basically what happens here is that the majoritarian ethos or the dominant ideas become what accepted. They get legitimized by the media. And here we can quote the whole theoretical, we can look at this whole idea of legitimizing and mainstreaming majoritarian ethos in the media through the lens of this theory of spiral of silence, wherein the minority voice gets fizzled out and it is only the majority voice that finds resonance in media. So, and basically what we do when it comes to, mediatized politics is that we always foreground news stories in such a format or in such a narrative that it is always against, it is always in the garb of us and them. We always have it, we attach some value system like, nationalism or patriotism to things, which should be otherwise discussed very, rationally. Now, Now, in order to get rid of this whole idea, in order to get rid of this whole, this thing of this fake news, so there are different universities or different organizations have come up with different notions of interaction about how algorithms, automation, politics, and how it happens. And this is one example that I have cited, Comprop, which is undertaken by Oxford Internet Institute. Now, the whole idea, the taxonomy, I'll take just 5 more minutes, sir, if you're there. Now, taxonomy of online hate. Sometimes we resort to hate speech. Sometimes we resort to, things like trolling, cyber bigotry, then, polarizing language, the kind of language we use, the moral panics that we create when it comes to fake news. Then again is the concept of digital swarming, wherein we believe, we just, without even cross-checking facts, we just tend to go where our, peers take us. So, there are different techniques. We all, understand there are, this whole idea of gaslighting, how we create memes, cartoons, this commodification of outrage. Sometimes we, use or edit photographs in order to, or we doctor videos and put them totally out of context. And in a way, we spread misinformation or disinformation on media. Now, these are all examples. These, I was reading this book written by one of the members of Alt News, wherein he had cited examples like how over the media in the last couple of years there have been different examples of fake news which spreading, like Muslims celebrating Pakistan's wins over India in Champions Trophy. Then how these are all examples. Now, you must all have seen this photograph of Sonia Gandhi being compared with Marilyn Monroe. Now, if you look at the slogan here, these are all stories which have been, this on the picture on the left has been, morphed, or it has been changed, in order to create a certain idea about a politician. Then we have also seen, this particular picture on top, wherein in this whole picture in which Jawaharlal Nehru was not there, he has been deliberately included, and especially these are things which are done just before elections. Now, in addition to politics, it has also affected society at large. Now, we have all seen, heard maybe about this example of WhatsApp lynchings that have taken place in places like Jharkhand, in Assam, wherein different people have died because of rumors that have spread, false stories which have spread on social media, particularly WhatsApp. Now, what we have to do here is go for fact checking. Now, according to, this is a very important statement, I feel, especially when it comes to journalism students, we need to understand that everyone is entitled to his or her opinion, but not to his or her own facts, because fact can be only one. So what we basically have to do is, every time we come across, whenever we, be it on WhatsApp or on Facebook, whenever we get a story that we feel inclined to share, we have to go for something that we call fact checking and debunking and verification. So these are very essential things. And and in addition to it, there have been, especially in the times of COVID, we have seen examples. The social media has been replete with examples of especially at the times of the initial stages of the lockdown, we have seen examples of how the Tablighi Jamaat has been different stories have been floated on social media regarding the Tablighi Jamaat and how they have spread the virus. Now, most of these stories that were spread about the COVID, especially about the cure or about a certain religious minority group, all of these have been debunked by different fact-checking, websites like Alt News, SM Hawks, Clear, Bloom, Live, and others. So basically, these are all examples. If you want, I can share this slide with you, because of paucity of time. Then again, we were, during demonetization times, we had seen that, the fake news stories which said that the RBI issues, 2,000 rupees note with a chip on it. Then, how Narendra Modi is the best PM in the world, and UNESCO has judged, the Jana Gana Mana as the best anthem in the world. We have also seen photographs like this. On the left, obviously, it is a photoshopped and fake story. How these things have been done. So basically here, I would just like to, finish my presentation by saying that we all understand that we live in a world, which is very different from the world maybe that we shared, say, even, a decade ago. Now, accordingly, we have to understand that, we will be bombarded with a lot of information all the time. But what we need to do is that, apart from being, technically savvy, especially, I'm talking about the journalism students, or, who are aspiring journalists of tomorrow, we have to inculcate this whole idea of media literacy. Even as technology pervades every aspect of our life, the ability to navigate and successfully, check whether a story that comes your way is true or not, that is actually, the basic mandate of journalism education. Journalism education is not about only, learning the tools or the techniques of news collection and dissemination, but rather it should also be in developing a critical consciousness through which you are able to, differentiate between what is fake and what is genuine. So here comes the whole idea about, the idea of critical thinking. You have to, as students, be inquisitive about a wide range of issues. You have to remain well informed, and, to, basically the whole idea of being rational and logical. So even as, journalists, tomorrow when you become journalists, you have to consider a lot of things in order to spot fake news. So these are things that you have to do. You have to consider the source, you have to read beyond, check the author, what is the source, what is the date, or whether it is a satire, whether it is an expert, or sometimes when we, even you also have to check whether when you're writing a story, whether your own biases have come in the way. So basically there are different, apart from that, in addition to your own critical understanding of things, you also have to, learn basic tools and techniques of fact checking. So there are, things like reverse image search, Google reverse image search, then, TinEye, RevEye, these are all tools, Invid, News Check. These are all techniques through which basically you can combat the whole idea of fake news. The government also has initiated certain steps. There are stricter, penalties for offensive social media content. Again, during election, at the time of election, the Election Commission has set up something that we call MCMC, which is Media Certification and Monitoring Cell, in order to, keep a strict watch on paid news and fake news across different platforms. So these are all things that have been done. In addition, there are the social media giants who have also, come forward. Okay, now they have also, imposed certain restrictions, like they have imposed a limit on message forwarding, or, there are different things that have been done to the platform itself, so that the whole menace of fake news, is stopped, or maybe even if it is not stopped, maybe it is contained to a large extent. So that is basically the whole idea. I'm sorry if I've taken more time, but this is what I had to say, regarding fake news and this whole idea of how it disseminates and why it disseminates.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It was a
Yeah.
wonderful session. Like, you haven't taken much time. We were so much engrossed in the session. We didn't realize it was more time
Okay.
taken. And it was a very resourceful session. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, we would go for the question answer round first. Your question answer on your session. We would go for the question answer round. Okay. The first question came from Onulekha Kaur of third year. Our student Onulekha Kaur of third year. She asked, ma'am, that is there any difference between yellow journalism and fake news?
Yellow journalism, basically, this whole idea, yellow journalism, as in, you don't even sometimes, this whole idea when it came, way back during this competition between William Randolph Hearst and Pulitzer. This is when the whole idea of yellow journalism came, wherein, you publish the public, just to gain, more publicity, just to, grab attention of the people, you tend to resort to, some bits of, gossip kind of, thing. Okay, so most of the times, this stories may not be fake. Sometimes, suppose, you are reporting on the private relationship of a, say, movie star. So this is an example of yellow journalism. Yellow journalism is not something that we need to encourage, but fake news. Now, fake news is something that is it is shown to be true. Most of the times it is circulated with an intention to, this yellow journalism also has the same intention, and that is to, it does not care about maligning somebody's image, or, this person's image. or somebody's reputation. And fake news is similar in the sense that, you show something as being true. Fake news is something in which you manipulate. Sometimes you manipulate, sometimes you morph, sometimes you create stories that are not even there, or you sometimes put things totally out of context in order to create certain ideology or certain idea about something. It may be about a politician, it may be about a celebrity, or it may be about anything in the public domain. So basically, essentially, the core idea is that sometimes yellow journalism is also something which is very bad. You resort to sensational news just to create the whole thing. So the intent is similar, but maybe sometimes, like, for example, today, if you say you get into the private life of a politician, now you may be, there is a very thin line between the two. Yeah.
Right. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, another one similar to this, similar to Onulekha, Ainesha Shengupta, even she is from 3rd year of our college. She had asked that, has digital news increased the usage of fake news or yellow journalism? So
Yes,
can we conclude that digital news is
Yes, definitely, because because here the whole problem is that, like, before the coming of, say, social media or internet as a platform for media, what actually happened was that, if you talk about traditional mainstream media, so what usually happens in news collection and dissemination is that a reporter collects a news and he submits it to the sub-editor or to the editor, and it goes through different layers of fact checking, or maybe sometimes even editing, because mainstream media, maybe television, or I wouldn't say that about television, but especially if you talk about print media, sub-editors, if he feels that the story may be false, there is some amount of fact checking that goes on in traditional media. But with the coming of social media, what has happened is that, because we are the creators, especially this whole idea of citizen journalism, now everybody with a smartphone in his or her hand can become a journalist. Now, even though we talk about things like democratization of the media, we say that mainstream media, there have been different debates about how mainstream media does not cover the issues of a particular, say, religious minority group, or of a certain gender, or maybe some particular area. Or we tend to see that traditional media, they tend to focus a lot of stories only about the metro cities. They ignore the villages and small townships of the area. So in that way, social media has given us a platform to talk about our own issues, but that has also given rise to a very big problem or concern, and that concern is that it has given us the power to also create fake news. Now, depending, if I want, I can use it for very particular a good purpose. I can use it as a democratic platform for I may be belonging to a marginalized community. I may be using it for propagating some issues and concerns, and I may also use it as a tool for propaganda. Basically, I belong to a certain ideology, and I do not believe in an alternative ideology. So what I do is that I have the power to take vulnerable people on the web for a ride, and I can disseminate fake news, and I can put something totally out of context. For example, the examples that I had given you, you must have also seen photographs of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi wearing a t-shirt in which it is written 420. Now that particular photograph, which was virally spread over the social media, that t-shirt has been totally taken out of context, and this thing was G20. He was part of the G20, so the G has been changed into 4. So this is definitely social media, we can say, has given rise to a new something that we say that we are bombarded with too much information. Even as this COVID pandemic takes place, we are bombarded with something which you call infodemic. We have too much information then that is required. Even if you talk about the COVID, scenario, every day you have thousands of papers published across the world which talk about having found a cure for COVID. Now, these are all, very, big issues of concern. So definitely you can say that with the coming of the digital platform and because of this whole concept of democratization and user generated content, fake news or, journalism or yellow journalism has, exponentially increased.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, another question that
Yes.
is from Nirvik Chakraborty of second sem.
Okay.
He is our student. He had put in that, what is the difference between fabricated and manipulated news?
Fabricated, manipulated, fabricated, manipulated, it is basically the same. A fabricated, manipulated content is, if you have just seen this slide, like, you can manipulate with the photograph. For example, the Sonia Gandhi's picture that I had shown you, okay, just to create, and because there are some people who are not critically, digitally literate, especially if you talk about the semi-literate community that is there on, say, platforms like WhatsApp. Now, every other person on the street that you see, now that has a smartphone in his or her hand, and without even being able to discern between what is right and what is wrong, they share information on WhatsApp. Now, fabricated. Now, this kind of stories, especially during times of, say, election, when a lot of propaganda news spreads on social media, especially on WhatsApp. And these people, what they do is, Sonia Gandhi's photograph was morphed. Sonia Gandhi's photograph was morphed. Sonia Gandhi's photograph was, the body of Marilyn Monroe's picture had been taken and her face had been, inserted into it. In the same way, it is basically the political, mostly, I shouldn't be saying this, but it is the IT cells of the different political parties which get involved in doing such things so as to create content which is taken out of context. So fabrication or manipulation is basically, the same. Okay. You manipulate with the truth and you totally put it completely out of context.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was for so in-depth discussion of each questions. Ma'am, we would like to shift to the YouTube questions, if any. Our HOD sir, Dr. Kaushik Rai, will put in the questions. Sir, are there any more questions from YouTube?
Yes, there are a few questions from YouTube. One is from Shahid Ahmed. He says, in a time when we live in web jungle, where everything from online, and our country where media boom is especially social media, how to deal with fake news?
Yes. Yes, sir. That is what we said. Like, we have to have this critical media. We need to, as journalists, we have, like we had already discussed, we have to go for things like, fact checking. You have to, before we are basically, we tend to believe in anything. We are vulnerable to a lot of information that come on our way. So we immediately, we have this tendency, and like, this, like the reinforcement theory says, like, because we live in a filter bubble, or because we live in what we call echo chambers, we are all, we all have developed something that we call tunnel vision. We all have developed tunnel vision, and accordingly, what I have a very short-sighted way of looking at things. So whatever pertains to my own ideology, to my own opinion or idea about something, I will immediately, be vulnerable to believing it. So what we need to do is, as journalists, if you're talking from the journalist point of view, the person needs to have a critical understanding. You need to go for fact checking. You also need to understand whether, your own biases have come in the way as you report, something. Now, on the other hand, as consumers, if you talk about being consumers of fake news, we need to have this critical understanding. Critical understanding, I repeat, is something which is like, according to professor, of one of the professors of UK, Professor David Buckingham, he says that, the whole idea, most of the times as media departments, we tend to, put in a lot of emphasis on creating, technically savvy or digitally savvy, students who will be good enough to join the workforce, and that workforce is the media organizations. So we tend to put a lot of focus on these aspects of being, making our students technically savvy. But what we need to do is to create this whole idea of critical consciousness. We need to have, we need to develop a critical understanding or critical rational or logical thinking among students, or even, as consumers ourselves of social media content, most of the times which may be, fake in nature. We need to have this discerning idea. And accordingly, we have already discussed, because of paucity of time, I had to rush through the slides. I'm sorry for that. But basically what you do is you have to have knowledge about certain tools and techniques. For example, like we said, Google reverse search. If you feel that, a particular photograph or a particular news story may not be, authentic, or it is not verifiable, what kind of, information may not, you have found on internet is not credible. So what you can do is you can go for something that you call reverse check. Now, Google, especially as a platform, has taken a lot of initiatives. It has been, holding seminars across the country, especially in the last 1 year, to, identify. They have, they have created workshops to teach people how to go for things like reverse checking. So these are all technical things which may not be possible to, make you understand now, but this is possible, provided we know the technique of doing it. These are things which are verifiable. Reverse search, and this is what things, different websites like Alt News, they are doing. Especially, if you remember this example of the Tablighi Jamaat, how they were, shown to be licking spoons and plates. Now, these stories have been debunked by Alt News. So this is possible. If you understand the techniques, there are different software through which you can do reverse search. So you can find out the, credibility or authenticity of a particular news story that you have found on the internet. Hello. Yeah.
Ma'am, your session was so wonderful that the chat box is full of questions. I'm sorry, but you have to answer a few more, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I am putting. I'm trying to put Mr. Kringshu Pramaning on the line. Please hang on for a second. Okay.
Okay, sir. Right, sir. Right.
Yeah.
Ma'am, one sec.
Yeah.
Devanjan, please put him online. Devanjan. Hello. দেবাঞ্জন
বলুন স্যার।
হ্যালো, শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
কতদিন কথা বলবো?
এই দেবাঞ্জন।
হ্যাঁ বলুন স্যার।
তবে দিয়ে দাও, বহুত বলছি।
ওকে। স্যার আপনি বলুন। হ্যাঁ স্যার বলুন। হ্যালো স্যার। হ্যালো। মাইকটা অন।
দেবাঞ্জন, ওনার সাউন্ডটা আসছে কিনা একটু দেখে নাও।
হ্যাঁ আমি সবই দেখে নিচ্ছি।
ওনার ভিডিওটা পেয়েছি কিন্তু সাউন্ডটা আসছে না, একটু দেখে নাও।
হ্যাঁ আমার সাউন্ড আছে কি স্যার?
তোমার সাউন্ড আসছে কিন্তু
ঠিক আছে, তো এবার স্যার আপনি কিছু বলুন তাহলে একটু সাউন্ডটা।
শোনা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে, শোনা যাচ্ছে।
শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
ডেস্কটপ দেখা যাচ্ছে।
আরে হ্যালো কিংস বাবু, আপনি এবার কথা বলুন। সাউন্ড টেস্ট।
শুনতে পাচ্ছেন? আমার কথা শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
হ্যাঁ, শুনতে পাচ্ছি, শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
কথা বলছি, শুনতে পাচ্ছেন?
হ্যাঁ, শুনতে পাচ্ছি।
হ্যাঁ স্যার শোনা যাচ্ছে।
শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আমার কথা?
হ্যাঁ, শোনা যাচ্ছে, আপনি বলুন।
কিভাবে করবো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার শুরু করুন।
হ্যাঁ, বলুন।
আমি কি করবো?
হ্যাঁ স্যার।
হ্যাঁ, বলুন।
আমাকে ইয়েস বলে আমি শুরু করতে পারি?
হ্যাঁ, ইয়েস, শুরু করুন।
স্যার ইয়েস করে দিয়েছি, আপনি শুরু করে দিন।
নমস্কার,
Sir,
আমি প্রথমেই দমদম মতিঝিল কলেজের সমস্ত ছাত্রছাত্রী, বিশেষ করে সাংবাদিকতা বিভাগ এবং জনসংযোগ বিভাগের সমস্ত ছাত্রছাত্রীকে আমি আমার অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি এবং একই সঙ্গে সম্মানীয় প্রিন্সিপাল প্রদীপ্ত গুপ্ত রায় এবং অন্য যারা আপনাদের ফ্যাকাল্টি রয়েছেন প্রত্যেককে আমি আমার তরফ থেকে অভিনন্দন জানাচ্ছি। খুব ভালো লাগছে, আজকে একটা অদ্ভুত মানে একটা মিডিয়ার সংযোগের মুখোমুখি আমি আজকে হয়েছি, যে এভাবে কখনো আমরা কল্পনাও করতে পারতাম না যে এইভাবে আমরা একেবারে সকলের সঙ্গে একটা দূরত্ব বজায় রেখে, যে আমরা যে এখন বলছি না যে সামাজিক দূরত্ব, সেই সামাজিক দূরত্ব বজায় রেখে আমরা যে সবাই মিট করতে পারবো, মানে আমরা সকলে দূরে রয়েছি অথচ একটা জায়গায় কোথাও আমরা মিট করে বিজ্ঞান ও প্রযুক্তির এই অভাবনীয় উন্নতির জন্য এটা সম্ভব হয়েছে। এবং বোধহয় করোনা ভাইরাস যে ভয়াবহ শিক্ষা আমাদের দিয়েছে তার ভালো দিকগুলোর এটি হয়ে অনেকটাই তো খারাপ দিক, তার মধ্যে ভালো দিক একটি। তো আমি আর কোনো অনেকটা সময় অন্য বিষয়ে যাচ্ছি না, আমি ফেক অ্যান্ড প্রোপাগান্ডা নিউজ কভারেজ ইন ইন্ডিয়া। খুব 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 যুক্তিপূর্ণ বিষয়, খুব যুক্তিপূর্ণ একটা সাবজেক্ট আপনারা চয়ন করেছেন আজকে। একটা মানে আমার বলতে পারে যে সংবাদ এখন সর্বনাশ করছে সমাজে, সংবাদের মিথ্যা অংশ সর্বনাশ করছে এবং মিথ্যা সংবাদের জন্য মানে ব্যাপক সমস্যা হচ্ছে। অনেক কিছু গতিমুখ পরিবর্তন হয়ে যাচ্ছে এই মিথ্যা সংবাদের জন্য। কিন্তু একটা জিনিস সবার আগে যেটা উল্লেখ, যে আমরা যখন সাংবাদিকতা করেছিলাম বা সাংবাদিকতা পড়াশোনা করেছিলাম তখন এখন সাংবাদিকতার ছাত্রকে প্রথম যে বার্তা দেওয়া হয় হোয়াট ইজ নিউজ, নিউজ কাকে বলে, তার প্রাথমিক শর্ত হচ্ছে যাহা নিউজ কতটা আছে। এটা আমাদের শিক্ষা ছিল আমরা যারা জার্নালিজম করেছি, যে নিউজ মানে হচ্ছে নতুন, আর নিউজ মানে হচ্ছে নতুন কিছু, তাই হচ্ছে নিউজ। কিন্তু সমস্যা হচ্ছে সেটা কোনো ফেক হতে পারে না, যেটা সত্যি সেটাই নিউজ, যেটা সত্য সেটাই নিউজ। তো সমস্যা হয়ে গেছে যেটা মিথ্যা সেটার আগে একটা ফেক শব্দ বসে গেছে, যেটার সঙ্গে কোনো মিলই হতে পারে না। নিউজের সঙ্গে নিউজ একটা মৌলিক শব্দ, একটা মৌলিক শব্দ হচ্ছে নিউজ, তার আগে কোনো ফেক শব্দ বসতে পারে না, বা পরেও বসতে পারে না, আগেও বসতে পারে না। কিন্তু বসেছে এই কারণে যে সমাজ এবং জীবনের একটা অভাবনীয় পরিবর্তন এসে গেছে এই মিডিয়ার জগতের পরিবর্তনের মধ্যে থেকে, এবং যার জন্য এই ফেক কথাটার গুরুত্ব পেয়েছে, নিউজের এটা গুরুত্ব পাচ্ছে। এই কারণে কি করে হলো, আমি একদম গোড়ার কথা বলি, যে আমি একজন ট্র্যাডিশনাল জার্নালিস্ট, মানে আমি কিন্তু সূচনা করেছি একটা প্রিন্ট মিডিয়ায় চাকরি করে। আমি চাকরিতে 25 বছর আগে জয়েন করেছিলাম, তখন আমার 25 বছর বয়স ছিল। তখন সেই চাকরিতে আমার প্রথম কাজ ছিল হচ্ছে লেখা। আমি লিখতাম, হাতে লিখতাম। আজকে কিন্তু আমি হাতে লিখি না, আমি টাইপ করি, আমি মোবাইলে লিখি। আমি হাতে লিখতাম, সেই লেখা যখন অফিসে যেত, অফিসে গিয়ে যখন আমাকে একটা অ্যাসাইনমেন্টে পাঠানো হতো, আমি একটা নিউজ লিখতাম ফিরে এসে, এবং লেখার আগে আমি আমার চিফ রিপোর্টারকে জিজ্ঞেস করতাম আজকে এই সংবাদই হয়েছে। চিফ রিপোর্টার তাতে 4 রকম 5 রকম প্রশ্ন করতেন যে এটা কেন হলো, ওটা কেন হলো না, এরকম হলো না, এটা কেন হলো না, এর কোড নিয়েছো, তার কোড দাও, এটা না হলে এটা দাঁড়াবে না, এই লাইনটা বাদ দাও, রাখো, এটা প্রাপ্তি। তারপরে লেখাটা যখন করে নিয়ে এলাম, তখন একটা এডিটিং এর ব্যবস্থা ছিল, তিনি সেটা এডিট করতেন, চিফ রিপোর্টার করতেন, অথবা এডিটের দায়িত্বে যিনি থাকতেন তিনি করতেন। এইবারে আমার সংবাদটা চিফ রিপোর্টারের কাছ থেকে চলে যেত নিউজ এডিটারের কাছে, তারপর সেটা হয়তো ডেপুটি এডিটারের কাছে যেত, তারপর হয়তো সেটা যেত এডিটারের কাছে। মানে এই যে আমি বলছি যে একটা ছাঁকনি ছিল, একটা খবর পরিবেশনের আগে একটা ছাঁকনি ছিল, মানে আমি একটা লিখে দিলাম আর সেটা ছেপে চলে গেল, ব্যাপারটা কিন্তু তা ছিল না। ব্যাপারটা এটাই ছিল যে সেই খবরটা সত্য কিনা, সেই খবরটা মধ্যে কোনো জাস্টিফিকেশন আছে কিনা, কোনো মিথ্যে তথ্য আছে কিনা, অসত্য কোনো মানে কি বলবো যে যেটা কোনো প্রয়োজন নেই সেই সব কিছু আছে কিনা, সেগুলো দেখার একটা ব্যাপার ছিল। এবং দেখার পর তবেই সেটা মুক্ত হতো, হয়ে সকালবেলা ছাপা হতো। কিন্তু এটা যখন ট্র্যাডিশনাল মিডিয়া, এটা যখন প্রিন্ট মিডিয়া থেকে যখন আমরা ইলেকট্রনিক্স মিডিয়ায় গেলাম, তখনও কিন্তু এটা ভুল হলো না। তখনও কিন্তু এইটা তখন একজন টেলিগ্রাফে কোন একটা খবর নিয়ে এলেও একইভাবে অফিসের যেটা দেশের খবরটা ঠিক, এটা এই কথাটা এর মধ্যে রিয়েলিটি আছে, ওই খবরটা পরিবেশ হবে কিনা, এই গোটা ব্যাপারটাই কিন্তু ওর মধ্যে ছিল। কিন্তু যবে থেকে এই মোবাইল এলো, এই মোবাইলের মধ্যে যখন এই অ্যান্ড্রয়েড ফোন থেকে আমরা এখন স্মার্টফোন বলছি, এই রূপান্তর হলো, এবং ফেসবুকে এবং টুইটারে এবং ইনস্টাগ্রাম বা যা যা এখন হয়েছে, অত মোটা কথা এই যেগুলো এলো, এগুলো পর থেকে আমি যারা বাড়িতে বসে আছি, আমি কিভাবে হলাম, আমি হঠাৎ আমি ফেসবুকে লিখে পাড়ায় একজনের করোনা ধরা পড়ে, আমি যাই আমার ফ্ল্যাটের সে বলে ওই বাইরে দুটো করোনা, সেটা যে নিউজ নয় তা নয়, সেটা কিন্তু নিউজ হলো, কিন্তু তার কোনো ট্র্যাডিশনাল জায়গাতে আমরা নিউজটা পরে সেই জায়গাটা রইল না, সে একটা নিউজ এইভাবে বাজারে ছেড়েল, দিয়ে মানে ওটা যার জন্য করোনার কথা উঠলো বলেই বলি যে ডব্লিউএইচও কিন্তু দুটো কথা বলেছে এই করোনার নয়, রোদে থাকুন, একটু বাইরে হাঁটুন, অনুষ্ঠান করে একটা লিস্ট সেগুলো ফরওয়ার্ড হয়ে চলে যায়, এবং তাতে ওপরে ভয়ঙ্কর ভূত থাকলো এগুলো কোনোটা সকালবেলা ভালোই হয় মন করা সেটা পুট করে যাও সেটা মধ্যে চলে গেছে এটাই বলেছি এটা কিন্তু
ঠিক আছে
ভয়াবহ যে করণ
ওনার ইয়েটা
এটা
সমস্যা
একটা
হচ্ছে
কিন্তু খুব ভয়ঙ্কর দিক এবং
ওকে আপনি বন্ধ করে দিবি কলার কি
Payal, you can
Sir,
carry
yes,
on
yes,
with
sir.
you can carry on with the question and answer. We'll be
okay,
recording
sir.
this thing and we'll be presenting it.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, ma'am. So we can go to the question answer round again. Back to the question answer round. Hello, ma'am. Can you listen? Can you hear me?
Aisha, madam. Can you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Can we go to the question? Can we go back to the question answer round, ma'am? Then there is some technical problem in that in that speaker going on. Okay, ma'am. So we have a next question from the professor of our college, Dr. Haradon Shah. He said that he asked that society demands the real news and not the fake news. How the fake news can be identified?
That is what we have been discussing, madam. So basically, we have to have we have to develop this culture among, first of all, journalists. We as teachers of, say, media students, we need to make them aware of things like ethics. When you teach them, I feel, I've been teaching in my department for last couple of years, many years, and I've seen that, when it comes to the whole issue of ethics, journalism ethics, we do not put too much emphasis on it. So ethics is something which needs to be, drilled into the heads of aspiring journalists, who are our students right now. So that is one thing. And again, when it comes to, say, journalists, professional journalists who are working now, they first of all need to, honesty and ethics is something which cannot be taught. It needs to be inherent in every human being. Apart from that, unintentionally, so that, as a journalist, I do not fall prey to fake news, or I do not become a party to the dissemination of fake news. So what I need to do is that I need to be technically aware and I need to be technically sound to check whether a story that has come into my news feed, nowadays the biggest problem is like, this whole the whole way social media and traditional media or mainstream media, they act together as conduits of fake news. Now what happens is like, social media comes up with a lot of stories, most of which may be false, and because these stories are easily accessible, these stories are easily available, mainstream media also has become very lazy in the sense that they tend to pick up stories from social media platforms without, most of the times, especially when it comes to television medium. When it comes to television news channels, our Hindi, especially Hindi news channels, they are replete with examples of circulation of fake news, or hyper sensational kind of news stories are spread, or they may even personally attack a particular community or a particular group. So most of the time, this whole ideology, and ultimately, this thing, mainstream media also, I feel, to a large extent does all these things. They, instead of going for verification or fact checking, they also sometimes, I feel, deliberately or intentionally circulate fake news so as to have better TRPs. So this needs to be contained, this needs to be controlled, and I feel, to a large extent, as consumers of social media or as consumers of news, we need to we need to be more aware. We need to also learn the tricks or the techniques of fact checking, and only then maybe we can stop this menace. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Ma'am, it will be okay for you to continue with the question answer now?
Yeah. I just got an irritation in my throat. Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Next question is from another professor of our college, from mathematics professor from our college, Nobin Chandra Bishwas. He says that many news channels shows some video clips in their channel, and at the end they say that the truthfulness of this video has not been verified by the channel. Why is that?
That is the whole idea. That is the thing I was just talking about, that because of this user generated content, and because there is a lot of freedom when it comes to, say, spreading fake news, digital platform or the social media platform offers a lot of scope. And what the television news channels, they do is they do not want to take the blame, so they will come up with a small ticker which says that we do not we have not gone for any kind of authentication, so as to they do it because they do not want to get into any legal trouble. They do not want to face the legal consequences of circulating fake news. But at the same time, they also want to raise their own TRPs. So anything that is like if you have seen this recent I wouldn't call that fake, but sensational kind of news, that stories that have been circulated, especially with the this passing away of this actor called Sushant Singh Rajput. There have been a lot of stories circulating on social media. There have been a lot of human psyche is basically, we are very, very vulnerable to becoming suspicious. It is, human psychology is very vulnerable to becoming suspicious of things. So the moment Sushant Singh Rajput died, most of these television news stories, or even the social media, was filled with stories of how these issues of nepotism, or his personal life, or maybe his ex-girlfriend. So all these stories, these are spread on social media, and because people were acting, they were all reacting in a very emotional manner to that particular incident happening on 14th June. So that is why digital media also took advantage of it. They knew that most of the people were very sad about losing this upcoming actor. So what they did was, in order to come up with something that we call clickbait, we have already discussed about it. Clickbait websites had increased exponentially over the last 1 month, and these stories are also carried by the mainstream media, especially the television news channels, because the whole news scenario has changed in the last couple of years. Earlier we used to have specific times for news bulletins. Nowadays, we have 24-hour news channels. So most of the time we do not have enough news. So what we do is, we fill our news channels with a lot of sensational news. We will, somehow try to retain our audiences for our shows or for our news bulletins. And we know that the human tendency, towards, gossip. So what they do is, they try to circulate a lot of fake news which they collect from social media.
Ma'am, the chat box is just overfilling with questions. We won't be able to end the day if we go on with the questions. We'll go with the last question, ma'am, of the day. We'll just go with that and end the session. Another student, Shomik Basu, student of our college, 4th sem, he's a 4th sem. He had asked that, he said that you had mentioned the term IT cell of political parties in your talk. He said, what is the meaning of IT cell and what is their work actually, if you can define?
So basically, it is not something that that I should be discussing on a public platform, but these are things that we all know. We all know how who does. For example, who morphs a picture of Narendra Modi, or who morphs a picture of, say, Rahul Gandhi, for that matter. It is not people like you and me, because we are not. Unless we have some political, say, aspirations, we wouldn't, be spending our time and energy morphing politicians' photographs, politicians' photographs for that matter. So what they do is, like, it is not something which is open for us to see, but it is, there. It is just there, and people understand that all these different politicians, they, in order to create a positive image about their own party, be it, any party, across, I'm not taking any particular political party's name, but I think it happens across all political parties. So what they essentially do is, when things like, the performance of a certain political party is, say, sometimes questionable, so what they do is, like, they need to tarnish the image of another political party, and vice versa. It happens for all political parties, irrespective of, whichever party they belong to. So what they do is, like, there is a lot of speculation, and there are a lot of studies, even though these political parties may not openly say it, but there are these IT cells which manufacture these fake news, and they spread it. And most of the time, this fake news is not meant for people like you and me, but it is meant for people who are maybe, low literate, who have, low levels of literacy and understanding and rationality. So immediately when a person who only knows how to handle WhatsApp, but who maybe has not gone, who is maybe a school dropout, so the moment he sees a photograph of Sonia Gandhi, or he sees a, photograph, a questionable photograph of, say, Narendra Modi or any other, politician XYZ, so what they do is they have a tendency of forwarding it. And ultimately, this particular, agenda of a political party that created such a photograph or such a post in the first place gets fulfilled. So that is the basic, idea, or that is the basic work. The work is to spread propaganda news. Propaganda news, as in, we all understand what is propaganda. Propaganda is something which, is based on falsehood. A news that is based on falsehood. So propaganda news is spread, and a lot of, sometimes, stories are spread which are eulogizing their own political parties. My political party is doing so much work. My political party is doing so much work. These are stories which are created by the IT cells of different, political parties. Even though, so there are different people, like, the Attorney General, I was reading an article where the Attorney General of India, he was saying that, there is this whole menace of social media, and fake news spreading has become such a menace, or it has become such a big issue nowadays, and so many things are at stake. He says that, especially all politicians, and sometimes later on, and maybe at a later stage, even the general public, they say, this Attorney General, he was saying that, all the people should have their social media accounts linked to their Aadhaar card. So this is again a suggestion that has come from, our own Attorney General, who says that, especially for politicians, he says that we should, all these politicians should have their social media, profiles linked to their Aadhaar card, social media accounts, so that, to a large extent, fake news can be checked. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We won't disturb you anymore. It's been such an enriching talk, and your patientful question answer round was meant a lot for us. The audience are not ready to leave you. The questions are overfilled, but we'll have to end the session this time, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
And for the participants, I would like to put in the fact that our second session couldn't be continued for some technical faults, for technical problems, but the talk will be soon uploaded, will be recorded, and will be soon uploaded in the YouTube. And so we end the webinar today, and I would like our Professor Anibroto Promanik to give the vote of thanks and end the session. Anibroto, to you, please.
সবাইকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ। আশা করি সবাই আমাকে শুনতে পাচ্ছেন। দুদিন ধরে আমাদের এই ওয়েবিনার চলল। আমাদের গতকাল ছিল ডেভেলপমেন্ট কমিউনিকেশন সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া। গতকাল এটা উদ্বোধন করেছেন আমাদের ভাইস চ্যান্সেলর, ওয়েস্ট বেঙ্গল স্টেট ইউনিভার্সিটি ভাইস চ্যান্সেলর ডক্টর বাসব চৌধুরী। স্পিকার ছিলেন ডক্টর মৃণাল চ্যাটার্জি, প্রফেসর রিজিওনাল ডিরেক্টর আইআইএমসি। বাসব চৌধুরী স্যারকে এবং মৃণাল চ্যাটার্জি স্যারকে আমাদের অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ দমদম মতিঝিল কলেজের পক্ষ থেকে। আর একজন স্পিকার ছিলেন সুজাতা মল্লিক, সোশ্যাল সেক্টর অ্যাডভাইজারি, প্রাইস ওয়াটার কুপার্স ইন্ডিয়া। ওনাকেও মতিঝিল কলেজের তরফ থেকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানাই। আজকে আমাদের যে সেশন ছিল, যে বিষয় ছিল ফেক অ্যান্ড প্রোপাগান্ডা নিউজ কভারেজ ইন মিডিয়া। আজকে আমাদের স্পিকার ছিলেন আয়েশা তেহরা রশিদ, অ্যাসিস্ট্যান্ট প্রফেসর, ডিপার্টমেন্ট অফ জার্নালিজম অ্যান্ড মাস কম, সেন্ট্রাল ইউনিভার্সিটি অফ আসাম, শিলচর। আপনাকে অসম্ভব ধন্যবাদ ম্যাম আমাদের তরফ থেকে। মিস্টার কিংসুক প্রামাণিক ছিলেন প্রযুক্তি যেমন আমাদের অনেক সময় সহায়তাও করে, আবার অনেক সময় নয়েজেরও সমস্যা তৈরি করে। তো আশা করি আগামী দিনে আমরা কিংসুক প্রামাণিক স্যারকে পাবো আবার পরবর্তী কোনো ওয়েবিনারে বা সেমিনারে। উনি ডেপুটি এডিটর সংবাদ প্রতিদিনের এবং প্রেস ক্লাবের সেক্রেটারি। ওনাকে আমরা আজকে প্রযুক্তিগত কারণে নিতে পারলাম না, অসুবিধা হলো নানান কারণে। আগামী দিনে ওনাকে আশা করি ওনার কাছ থেকে আমরা পাবো, এবং আমি ওনাকে রিকোয়েস্ট করব যে ওনার যে কনভারসেশনস বা ওনার যে স্পিচ সেটা যদি আমাদের অডিও করে পরবর্তীকালে পাঠিয়ে দেন, তাহলে সেটাকে আমরা আপলোড করতে পারবো ইন ফিউচার। ধন্যবাদ জানাই আমাদের প্রিন্সিপাল, দমদম মতিঝিল কলেজের প্রিন্সিপাল ডক্টর প্রদীপ্ত গুপ্ত রায় মহাশয়কে, আরেকজন সিনিয়র প্রফেসর কোঅর্ডিনেটর IQAC ডক্টর সন্তোষ কুমার রয় স্যারকে, হারাধন সাহা স্যারকে, উনি কনভেনার সেমিনার কমিটি। ওনাদের অভিভাবকত্বে আমরা এই ওয়েবিনারটা করতে পেরেছি সাকসেসফুলি। এবং আমার কলিগ প্রফেসর দেবস্মিতা সরকার, ডক্টর পায়েল সেন চৌধুরী, প্রফেসর অন্তরা দাস হালদার, প্রফেসর নীলাদ্রি মন্ডল, সুবীর সিনহা, সবাই আমরা আজকে অডিওস ছিলাম। প্রফেসর মৌদীপা খান এবং আরো যারা বিভিন্ন কলেজের ফ্যাকাল্টি মাস্টারমশাই স্যারেরা ছিলেন, তাদেরকেও দমদম মতিঝিল কলেজের মাস কমিউনিকেশন ডিপার্টমেন্টের পক্ষ থেকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানাই, এবং বিশেষ করে কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাই এই টোটাল ওয়েবিনারটা দুদিন ধরে যার প্রযুক্তি সহায়তায় আপনাদের কাছে এত সুন্দরভাবে পৌঁছলো, সেও আমাদের একজন স্টুডেন্ট দেবাঞ্জন সোম এবং সুব্রত গোস্বামী আর শুভাশিস পাত্র। এনাদের সহযোগিতায় আপনারা এই প্রযুক্তির সহায়তায় আমরা এই সোশ্যাল ডিস্টেন্সটা কোথাও কমিয়ে নিতে পারলাম আমার মনে হয়। আগামী দিনে আমরা এই রকম লেকচার, এরকম ওয়েবিনার সেশনস আরো অনেক বিষয় আমরা করব, এবং আমাদের ইচ্ছা আছে যে ওয়েবিনার এটাকে সেমিনারে পরবর্তীকালে এর পার্টগুলো সেমিনারে বা পরবর্তীকালে ওয়েবিনারে আরো কিছু সিরিজ করার এবং সেগুলোকে পরবর্তীকালে পাবলিকেশনের দিকে যাওয়া, এটা আমাদের সবার ইচ্ছা ডিপার্টমেন্টের তরফ থেকে। আপনাদের সবাইকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ গত দুদিন ধরে, গতকাল এবং আজকে আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য। আশা করি আপনাদের আগামী দিনেও আমরা ঠিক এইরকম ভাবেই পাবো। ভালো থাকবেন, সামাজিক দূরত্ব বাড়ুক, মনের দূরত্ব কমুক। সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ দমদম মতিঝিল কলেজে গণজ্ঞাপন এবং মাস কমিউনিকেশন জার্নালিজম ডিপার্টমেন্টের তরফ থেকে। ধন্যবাদ। পাইল।
So we end the session over here. Thank you everybody for your presence and for your precious time over here. Okay, ma'am.